Well, I'm here with Dr. Mike McKelvey. He's an Old Testament professor at Reformed Theological Seminary here in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm glad you're here with us.
It's good to be here.
Well, today we're going to talk about the book of Ecclesiastes. And for a lot of people, they've probably not even taken a look at this book before. For those that have, it's a strange book. It's a bit confusing, and it's often misinterpreted. What we see from Ecclesiastes 1:1 is that it's associated with Solomon in this wisdom tradition. But let's just kind of dive into the book a little bit. When we think about Ecclesiastes, what kind of things or what kind of life experiences does the book ponder and consider?
Well, I think what it's doing overall is it is showing a universal picture of what it's like to live in this world. In terms of the cycle of this world, there's nothing new under the sun. Things keep going. The rain keeps coming down, and it goes into the rivers and then into the seas, but the seas are never full. And so there's this continued cycle of life where nothing seems to change, and yet everything is constantly changing. And so it can cause sort of a challenge to mankind to see this world in that way and to wonder what's the point in all this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what the book is doing is displaying that for us to show us that no matter where we are in life and what's going on in life, there is a frustration to life, and that we have to learn from that to trust God in the midst of life with regard to where we are and what we have and what He has given to us. And to see that, the gift of God, as far as in terms of what we have, as a good thing, and not try to rush ahead to change things, nor to long for that which was in the past. The book warns us against both of those things. And so really it's a book that's saying this is the nature of life in a fallen world, and so we have to learn to be grateful to God where we are and for what we have.
That's good. And from us talking in the past, I know you mentioned that when you think about little things in life, work or life or wisdom or pleasures, we learn that this is not our ultimate meaning, but there's also a sense in which we celebrate those things. One of the confusing things about the book is how it opens, and it's used in other places throughout the book as well. And some of our translations may say meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. How do we understand this in light of all of Scripture?
Yeah. The word there in the original Hebrew, it has been sort of a perplexing word for biblical scholars for millennia. Mm-hmm. How to understand this word. The word actually means vapor. Mm-hmm. It's the same word that is used for the name for Abel. Abel's life was such a brief life, and so his in Genesis 4. And so his life sort of gives us sort of a picture of what this idea of vapor is. Here for a moment and gone the next. Like this cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. On a cold winter day, the steam comes up, you can see it, and then it's gone. It's gone, yeah. And so that's what at the heart this word means. And so depending on the context in which it's used is really going to determine what it means by vapor or by vanity. And so this word in this translation, meaningless, it would be wrong to interpret that as saying there is no meaning, because that's not the point of the book. The book eventually goes on and talks about there is meaning because God is in control of everything. But the idea here is that there is a sense in which there is brevity, there is frustration, there is vanity, all of that sort of wrapped up into one idea here, because of the monotony and the cyclical nature of life and the frustration that it can bring. So, put it in a little different way. Depending on the context, this word will be interpreted differently. Sometimes it'll mean just brevity. Sometimes it'll mean vanity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it'll mean frustration. And so as you're reading this text, being sensitive to the richness of this original word, I think, will be helpful.
Good. One of the things in my own kind of studying that I've heard people teach on is that the ending of Ecclesiastes is important for understanding the book and the whole of its message. And let me read Ecclesiastes 12:13 through 14. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. I just read verse 13 there. But how is this conclusion? How does it help us understand the book and its message?
I think it fits very well because the whole book, as I said, is talking about learning to live life and trusting God in the midst of a creation that doesn't work the way we want it to, and the frustration that it can bring, and the fact that we don't control really anything. And so, what does God want from us? To fear Him, to keep His commandments. The fear of God is that a great, rich concept in the Old Testament, which means basically trust Him and follow Him, love Him, obey Him. It's a rich concept. So fear God, believe in Him, worship Him, and do what He says. And that is how we are to live our life in this world that can be challenging to live in. And I think one of the great things about this last passage here is actually verse 11. It says these words are like goads. The words of the wise are like goads, meaning they guide us, right? They're collected sayings, firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. So this idea of the one shepherd is God. And so what this closing section is saying, that this book is given to us ultimately by God. So that helps us, it shows us that we can't really dismiss what the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, as some people try to do,
right,
as though it's just a pessimistic book, or it's this, and God is, and the conclusion of this book is saying, no, this is wisdom. This is from God, and so what does He ultimately want from us? To love Him and keep His commandments. That's what fear God and keep His commandments means. Love Him and do what He says.
Well, that's a great word for us to end on. Why does it matter for us what Ecclesiastes is doing? It's calling us to trust in Him, to fear Him, to love Him in the midst of life's uncertainties, in the midst of life's up and down. So thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.